That's her graduation photo?
Novella Harris's Brooklyn home is covered with photos of her daughter Renee.
She was happy.
In December of 2020, Renee Harris was found shot to death in the hallway of her Queens apartment building. She was 54 years old.
We figured they had cameras, so you figure, okay, it's a matter of time before they catch who did it. But the last thing they said was, we have to be able to prove it. We just can't prove, because it happened in the stairwell, and there's no cameras in the stairwell.
18 months later, the NYPD still has not made any arrests, and the Harrises have lost hope.
I don't believe that case is being worked on now, no. 2 years later, no, it's in the cold files.
How does that make you feel?
It made me feel like they didn't care because it wasn't their family.
There are many families like the Harrises. In 2020, amid the pandemic, homicides spiked across the country and in New York City, while homicide arrests plummeted.
Were people getting away with murder?
Oh, I would not say that.
James Essig is the NYPD chief of detectives.
Between members out sick with COVID, being stretched with the details and the unrest, and then the increase in violence, you've seen a pretty substantial reduction in our clearance rates in homicides.
Clearance rate is the percentage of cases police resolve in a given year. According to FBI data, the NYPD's homicide clearance rate went from 86% in 2019 down to 27% in 2020, though the NYPD refutes those numbers.
Why do you think the FBI would have different numbers then?
Well, I don't know. I'll have to check on the reporting, but we were at 62% in 2020. We went up to 75% last year, and we're up at close to 80% this year.
He later told us the department is in the process of updating its computer system and in the meantime cannot send the correct numbers to the FBI. And while the data shows the NYPD's clearance rate is now improving, there's still a backlog from 2020.
What do you say to those families who in some cases feel forgotten?
We in the New York City Police Department and the Detective Bureau never stop working that homicide case. Some of them are in-depth investigations. We have to piece together every bit of evidence, and it takes a while.
Essig says detectives now need more evidence than ever before to make a homicide arrest.
The district attorneys want more evidence, whether it's video, forensics, ballistics, eyewitnesses. We run the gamut of closing homicides. But the amount of time, effort, and evidence gathered for homicides has definitely went up.
According to data obtained and analyzed by CBS News, the national homicide clearance rate improves year after year for cases involving white victims. But for Black and Hispanic murder victims, the data shows the clearance rate is consistently falling. The NYPD's clearance rate has been significantly higher for white murder victims over the last decade, most recently at 84% for white victims, compared to 61% for Hispanic murder victims and 53% for Black victims during that same year.
Every homicide's investigated. What I do see, some of our harder investigations into homicides are probably gang and narcotics investigations, street gangs, but I don't think we don't look at race in terms of a homicide investigation. We put all our resources going in to solve that homicide.
Do you think the NYPD or the detective unit needs more diversity to work and get that rate closer together?
I think we're a majority-minority police department. I mean, I have detectives of every race, ethnicity out there.
Department-wide, that is true, but according to NYPD data, more than half of its detectives are white. And while detectives collaborate on investigations, since 2020, the NYPD has seen a consistent rise in retirements and resignations.
Are there seasoned detectives retiring, and if so, is that affecting the homicide investigations?
You can't replace experience, so that's tough. But some of our younger officers, they're very good. Very young, which means they're very tech savvy, which is, we really need that kind of experience to solve homicides.
Back in Brooklyn, the Harrises say they haven't heard from a detective in at least a year. Kelly Harris believes the lack of closure is speeding up his mother's dementia.
I think it'll bring my mom a lot more peace with an arrest, because every other day, she asks, what's the detective would call us, or I need to go down to the precinct. All we just asking for is answers.